Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the fourth in this week's series of GeoMapApp webinars. We'll wait just a moment or a minute or so for a few more people to sign on, but whilst we're waiting, I'd like to ask Walter and Suzanne in Finger Lakes and Lisa, if you're online, if you can hear me. So if you can, please type in the questions box that you can hear me. Okay, we have confirmation that I can be heard. Great. In the GoToWebinar panel, you'll see that there's an area for questions. And as we go through, if you have any questions, please type them in there. And my colleague, Leslie Shee, will pass the questions along to me, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go through the webinar. My name is Andrew Goodwillie. I'm in the Integrated Earth Data Applications IEDA group at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, and we'll begin in just a few moments. The webinar is going to be about 45 minutes long, maybe a bit shorter, and we're recording it, and it will be placed on YouTube, and we'll send the link to everybody once it's up online. So if there's something that you don't quite catch during the webinar, you can view it later at your leisure. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get rid of this slide. So I'm assuming that everybody received my email a few days ago and was able to download, install, and successfully launch GeoMapApp. And so you should have a GeoMapApp icon on your computer that looks something like this. So I double-click that, and the first thing we see are three map projections. There's a Mercator projection over on the left, that's the default, a South Polar in the middle, that's the one, the third webinar just focused upon that, and there's a North Polar view over on the right. And for this Portals webinar, we'll stick to the Mercator default projection, and we hit Agree. So whilst the window starts, and it already started, let me just explain how the webinar will be organized. Because we've got quite a few portals to run through, I'm going to spend just a few minutes at the start of the webinar going through very basic functionality of GeoMapApp, and then I'll demonstrate importing a tabular data set, in this case a spreadsheet, and then we'll jump into looking at each of the portals in turn. So you can either try to follow along on your own computer, or if you wish to just view the webinar, that's fine. And like I said, if you have any questions, just let us have them, and we'll do our best to answer them. Okay, so the GeoMapApp window has three main areas. There's the map, the base map here, and this is something called the Global Multi-Resolution Topographic Synthesis that is generated by the IEDA group at Lamont, and we'll talk about the details of that in just a second. At the top of the GeoMapApp window, there are the menus, and we'll be looking in particular at the items listed under the Portals menu in this webinar. And beneath the menus, there's the toolbar containing some icons which allow us to perform functionality. So let's have a quick look at the structure of the base map. In the land areas, there's the 30-meter Space Shuttle Radar Topographic Mission dataset, land elevations. And in the North American lower 48 and Hawaii and Puerto Rico, there's the 10-meter USGS National Elevation dataset, so much higher resolution land elevations there. In the oceans, we have a mixture of cleaned, processed swath bathymetry, multi-beam swath bathymetry data, and contributed grids of bathymetry that were donated to the project by various researchers, by a number of researchers actually. And in places where we have neither of those higher resolution data sets, we use the predicted bathymetry of Smith and Samwell for the background data set. So the data set that forms the base map is a global digital elevation model, so it's like a 3D computer model of elevations. And as we zoom in on the map, we see increasing amounts of detail. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to activate the zoom button and go to the Pacific Northwest up here and zoom in eventually on Mount St. Helens. So it's in this area here, and we see the GeoMapApp application is talking with the server and pulling in the higher resolution data, and there we have it in focus. At the top we have Mount Rainier, then Mount Adams, Mount Hood down here, and over in the west, Mount St. Helens. So to zoom, I should have said I can either draw a box with the cursor, like that rectangular box, or I can click on the map and zoom in that fashion. So zooming way in to Mount St. Helens, and here we see the high resolution 10-meter resolution data set, the USGS NED. At present, we're looking only at a set of images that were made from the underlying three-dimensional digital elevation model. So to interrogate the DEM, we need to load the underlying grid. And for that, there are a couple of ways to do it. There's a shortcut in the toolbar area that will allow us to load the grid and immediately take profiles on the grid. Or we can hit the grid load button over here, and that will load the grid, and then we click on a profiling tool later. So let's use this one to load the underlying grid. So we see the software is talking with the server and pulling the three-dimensional data in, so now we'll have X, Y, Z data at our disposal. And when we move the cursor around in the map, we see the numbers at the top giving us the latitude and longitude, as well as the, in this case, elevation beneath the cursor. And I'm just going to deactivate the zoom tool so I don't mess myself up. Okay. And here, this layer manager window, we'll look at that. We'll look a bit later when we're looking at portals. And I need to go and find my global grids window. And if we click on the Windows button, then the global grids item will bring that particular window to the foreground. Let me just move this window up a bit. And here we go. So in this window, this is where we can control some aspects of the grid. We can change the artificial illumination over here on the right by dragging this sun symbol around. So let's change it to the southeast. And there we see that the illumination instantly changed on the map. We can change the color palette that's being used. We can change the range of the current palette by dragging these gray lines sideways, like so. Or we can use another palette that's listed in the palettes menu here. And we can import our own palette if we wish. We can plot contours in GeoMapApp, and we do that by clicking the contour button in the grid control window. And here we see GeoMapApp suggests some values, and let's just accept those 100-meter contours from an elevation of 500 to 2,600 meters, and hit OK. I should say all of this is done in a bit slower, at a slower pace in the first webinar that we'll be putting up online, as well as in the YouTube videos that are already up there. So there are the contours for this area. And we can turn the contours off by again clicking that button. Changing the vertical exaggeration in the VE box here makes the shadows more enhanced, so let's bump it up to 4, say. There we go. And let's generate a profile across this region. So here in the middle is the Profile button, and when this is clicked, the cursor is now active to take profile, and there it is, an instant topographic profile across Mount St. Helens. Moving the cursor in the Profile window shows how the numbers right where the cursor is located change. So here we have the longitudes and latitudes and degrees and minutes and decimal degrees, and in this case the elevation value over here. And this profile can be saved, and for now I'll get rid of it. And if we wish to save this window perhaps for a base map or a location map, we can go to File, Save Map Window, and there are various options for saving the gridded data and the imagery. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this grid, close, and now we're back to looking at the images made from the underlying digital elevation model. And I'm going to spend 1 minute running through how we could import our own data set. So this could be a case where someone at another university, say, has a data set on their computer that is not yet public. Perhaps it's in preparation for a publication, but they wish to view it in GeoMapApp, and this is one mechanism to do so. So I'm going to look at some geochemistry data for the Western Pacific, the Marianas area here, and let me just show the structure of the file. So I find the file. Here it is. It's a regular spreadsheet, and it has columns for the rock ID, the sample ID. Over here we have latitude and longitude. These are necessary so GeoMapApp can plot the points on the map. And over on the right we have the geochemical analysis values. Okay. So I can get rid of that. And I go to GeoMapApp's File menu, and here we see 4 or 5 options for importing data. And in this case, I can choose a gridded file, a shaped file, a very common GIS format, or for this particular example, a spreadsheet. So I choose the spreadsheet option, the Excel format, and now I use the navigation window to go find the spreadsheet. There it is, and hit OK. GeoMapApp tells me it's loading the file, and it's loaded. I hit OK, and this window asks us to confirm that the latitude and longitude columns were correctly identified by GeoMapApp. If they had not been labeled latitude and longitude, we would have to use the drop-down menus here to go find the corresponding column. But in this case, everything looks good, so we just hit OK. And we see that the location of the samples has been plotted in the map. A control panel has appeared over on the right, and the contents of the spreadsheet are now listed in the bottom. So just zooming on the points here to the IBM area, and for this particular webinar I'm just going to show one feature of importing data, and I'll just color these symbols using the color function over here according, say, to the NGO content, like so, and the dots, the symbols change color. I drag these lines around to change the color, and as I say, this is more of a review for what we've already covered in the first webinar. So in just a few seconds I imported a spreadsheet, changed the colors, and now I can use the colors to look for patterns in the data for this particular data set that's correctly registered in its geospatial context. So GeoMapApp offers a very quick way to analyze and visualize and explore data sets. Okay, so finishing with the examples of how to import data, I'll close that and go back to the world view by going to Bookmarks, Zoom to Global Scale. And now we're going to explore the portals. So let's open the portals menu. Because we're going to be using it throughout the rest of the webinar, let's select the top item, the tear off menu, and that opens a separate window, makes it a bit easier to navigate through the menu structure. And let's go pretty much in order down the list here, and we'll take a couple of minutes on each one. And so we start off with bathymetry, gravity, and magnetic anomaly profiles. So we select the item, hit OK, and off we go. Okay, so I'm going to minimize that portals window, and we see the structure of the GeoMapApp window has changed. We have a new control panel over on the right, and in here we can do various things. We can choose different catalogs of cruise data. We can also filter the displayed ship tracks. All of these black lines are the ship tracks plotted on the map. For example, let's say we want to plot only the ship tracks that have magnetic status. So we untick depth and untick gravity, and there are the ship tracks with magnetics data. But for now, we'll keep all the tracks highlighted. And we're going to zoom in, say, in an area in the South Pacific, South Central Pacific, right around here. And the more we zoom in, we can see the detail of the ship tracks is becoming more refined. And let's choose one of these ship tracks. So let me choose, say, this one. It shows us it's C2608, it's a Conrad leg, and I happen to know that's from, I think, 1983. And if we wish to check that, we can click the information button down here, and it brings up the header file for this cruise. And it shows that Jeff Weissel was the chief scientist, and, 1985, okay, that's a couple of years out. And it gives us some header information there. Okay, so I've selected a particular track, and now I can view the gravity, magnetics, or topography along that track by hitting the View Profile button here. So this will take a minute for GeoMapApp to go to the server, pull the information in, and put it in the display window. There it is. So the first thing we notice is that the track that we highlighted is now yellow to show that it's loaded, and the portion of the track that is displayed in the profile window beneath is shown in red on the map. Oh, and let me get rid of the map overlay, the inset there. I go to Overlays and untick the global map inset so we see the whole of the region. So scrolling through this profile using the scroll bar, the red line shows where we are on the map, and as I move the cursor in the map window, there's a symbol on the map itself that shows the position of the cursor. And we can flip between the different data sets. This is showing depth. We can flip to the gravity and the magnetics. In fact, going back to the gravity, these bumps in the gravity here are these small-scale miniations in the gravity field that were a very curious feature first noticed in the mid-80s. Okay, so this is a very quick way to look at profile data, gravity, magnetics, topography type data from ship tracks using GeoMapApp and plotting the data sets in their geographical setting. If we wish to download this data set, we can hit the Download Data button, and in this case it will download the MGD77 formatted file, the 120-character ASCII file. And for more information on the particular cruise we've selected, we can hit the information button here. Oops, not that one. Oh, I forget what that button is. And it will bring up a cruise page that shows more information. Okay, so moving along to the next portal, let me close this. I'll go back to the world, and we'll go find that window that lists all the portals. There it is. So let's have a look at the beach balls, the earthquake focal mechanisms portal. Clicking on that and hitting the OK button will load the CMT catalog. There we are. So let's minimize that window. And here we see lots of blue circles. So we don't see beach balls just yet because we're zoomed out on the global scale, but when we zoom in to a particular level, the beach ball solutions will appear. So let's hit the zoom in button, and we'll go and zoom in, say, around here. And there we go. So once we got to a particular level of detail in the base map, the symbols turned into the actual solutions. And here we see a predominant thrust fault solution on these beach balls. So whilst we're in this area, we can show how GeoMapApp can be used to layer different data sets. So I'm going to pause on the portals just for now, and I'll untick the zoom, and I'm going to load one of the built-in data sets, and this one will show us the depth to the top of the subducting slab, the data set that was contributed by Alan Syracuse and Jeff Abers from their 2006 work. So for that, I go into Base Maps, Regional Grids, and I just happen to know where it's located. It's in the subduction interface depth, and we'll choose the RUQ item. And here we see that we zoomed out a little bit to show the whole of the grid that we just loaded. And we see the new data set, this gridded data set loaded on top of the CMT solutions. So let's zoom in a couple of steps. There we go. Like that. And we'll use the layer manager to promote the CMT solutions up to the top of the map, the top layer, so they're all displayed. In the toolbar, I click on the layer manager window, and we see that the grid, the slab depth grid, is at the top, and the earthquake solutions are below. So let's click on that. There we go. So now we're layering data. And when we move the mouse around in the map, we'll see that the number that's displayed at the top of the screen, just here above the mouse, now gives us the depth to the top of the subducting slab. So here we're looking at the earthquake solutions and the depth down to the slab. And because it's a gridded data set, we could even take a profile across that slab. So let's go to the grid control window, click on the profile function, and now if I draw a profile there, I see the geometry of the subducting slab. So hopefully that shows you that with just a few clicks of the mouse we can layer data and start to really get into the details of the data sets and start to use them for research work or education. So this type of example that I just showed could be good for classroom settings, say if you're teaching an intro-level class on plate tectonics, say. Okay, so that's showing quickly the CMT solutions, and if we want more information on those, in the layer manager we see the little information button that looks like the tourist information symbol. Clicking once on that will bring up the page that takes us to the source of data, in this case the global CMT catalog. Alright, so I think that's covered everything for that particular portal. So I'm going to close that portal and that data set, and I'll go back to the world, and we'll look at the next portal in line. So, oh, there was a question, is it possible to change the color of the beach balls? At this point, unfortunately, no, they're in the black and white, but that is a great suggestion. And if you wish to send us email with some more details, we'll put it on the list of considerations for improving GeoMapApp in the future, so thanks a lot for that. Okay, so the next item in the portals menu is the earthquake locations, and I should say that we're in the future going to be consolidating the various earthquake-related data sets that are built into GeoMapApp. Under the datasets menu, there's the USGS NEIC catalog, and we're going to put them all together in one place so it's a bit easier for the user to navigate to the earthquake information. But for now, let's have a look at this ISC catalog. So we hit the load button, and let me minimize that and that. Okay. So here we're looking at actually a fairly old version of the ISC data, and it's already been color-coded according to depth. Green is for shallower earthquakes, yellow for intermediate, and red for deeper. And if we zoom, say, on the Tonga Kermadec area, then we see the number of earthquakes that were relocated here, and down in the bottom left of the GeoMapApp window, we see that there are 4,892 earthquakes located in this particular area. And this version of the catalog goes for the 31-year period from 1964 to 1995. And we can use the functions here to filter the data that's on display. So we could change the depth range, the magnitude range, and the years that is displayed. And if we wish to save this map at any time, we could go to the File, Save Map window, and it will save whatever is displayed within the map window there. So I'll let you play with this portal on your own time. There's a YouTube video specifically for this portal that's already on the GeoMapApp channel on YouTube. Okay, so I'll close that data set. The next portal in line is, let's see, this is a really fun one, the location and timing of seafloor, well, they're all fun, but this is even funner. Location and timing of seafloor earthquakes. And this one is going to look at the PML catalog of earthquakes using an animation functionality. So we clicked it and it's loading, and what I have to do is choose one of the arrays to show. So I'll choose the Solstice array, but I forgot to zoom out to the world, so let me just go back out to the world scale, and then we'll see the data set that's up there. Okay. So various things appeared on the GeoMapApp window. There's a control panel over on the right. Down at the bottom there's a time window, and we'll use this in a second after we've zoomed in to control the range of days that we look at. So let's just zoom on the earthquakes here, and we'll go in to about this level of detail. So there we see the very high resolution multibeam bathymetry mapping that's been done in this particular region of the Juan de Fuca Ridge. And I'll click on the regular cursor. So all of these little red squares show the locations of earthquakes. And down at the bottom we see a big spike, and this is a histogram showing the number of earthquakes throughout this time window. So in this case, the time window starts at 1991, day 241, so probably sometime in the late summer, and goes up to 2008 springtime. But I can use the mouse to drag these lines closer to the spike. So it looks like we have an earthquake swarm here, and by narrowing the time window to something like this, okay, now we see the structure of the earthquake swarm, and now we're looking at the 24th day, so January 24th, through to the 1st or 2nd of February 1998. And we have some functions down here that allow us to play an animation. So for this, let's just slow down the number of frames per second to say 5 frames per second, and then we hit the play function. So just watch the map, and we notice that the symbols on the map changed color. They went from red and they lit up, and then they gradually faded through red, orange, yellow down to black. And we finished the play. So let me play that one more time. And we notice on this particular swarm, it seems to propagate from the north towards the south. And this example has been interpreted as a dike injection event along the axis of the spreading center there. And if you wish, you can save that using the save function as a .mov file, so you can put it on your iPad, for example. Okay. So there's also some pre-selected swarms that have been selected, and using the menu over here, we can choose some of those to look at. And we can also choose different arrays, and if we want information about this female data set, we hit the big button here, and it will bring up a web page about the program there. Okay, let me get rid of those. Alright, so that's the earthquake animation portal, so we'll close that and go back to the global scale. And let's go find the next item in the portal list. Multibeam swath bathymetry. So we select it, and it should come up fairly quickly. Okay, there it is, so just a second or so. So it's different to the first portal we looked at, where we were looking at profiles of gravity, magnetics, and topography. In this case, we're looking at lines where we have swath bathymetry data collected with multibeam echo sounders. So let's zoom on an area. So I'm zooming somewhere on the South Pacific here. and we see the background map becomes more detailed when the tiles have been brought in from the server. And all of these lines going across the map are the tracks of the multibeam swaths. And we see the very common mow the lawn type of geometry here. Clicking on one of these tracks does a couple of things. So let's click this one. Oh, have to be a good shot with the mouse. So the track was highlighted in white, and part of it was highlighted in red. Well, first off, the track that was selected is listed as Ewing 9104, so it's a Ewing leg from 22 years ago. And the portion of the track that's highlighted in red, so it might be fairly hard to see on your GoToWebinar screen, but it's not too bad on my screen, is the specific file with this name that's listed down here. And you could foresee zooming to an area and wanting to download all of the Multibeam files for that particular area. And rather than downloading many cruises worth of data sets, we can use this function to select certain files and download just those files. So with this file selected, there's a button down in the lower right, download the selected ping file, and when we click that, it brings up a web page. And when we hit the, we're going to do it for research, say, and we'll hit the accept button. And here, we're prompted for the location of where we should save this specific swath file. So it's a very quick way to obtain certain swath files. Okay, if there are any questions on the portals we've looked at so far, let us know, and we'll try to answer them. Otherwise, I'll move to the next portal. So I'll close this one. And as I said before, there's a YouTube video that already exists for every one of these profiles and goes into much more detail than this quick overview. So we're back to the world view, and I'll go find my portals window. The next one is digital seismic reflection profiles. When this one is clicked, we should see some rectangles appear on the screen. Okay, there they are. Let me minimize that. And the structure of the GeoMapApp window has changed. We see a control panel over on the right and two panes down at the bottom that don't yet have anything in them. So let me zoom to an area. I'm going to zoom, say, to this area of the Alaska Aleutian Arc, which is one of the GeoPrism's primary sites. So I click on the zoom function and zoom in. So here we see the trench right there and the Alaskan Aleutian Islands streaming down. And I'm going to go to the cursor. Now the black lines that are on display here are the locations of the multi-channel seismic surveys that exist that we have built into GeoMapApp. So let's click on one of these lines. And over on the right, it tells me it's a Ewing 9409 cruise, and this particular line is 1232, and we can load the MCS profile for this line in the lower left map window. And it should come up in a moment. There it is. And there we see the reflections. So if we hit the zoom button in this portal, we can see the detail of the MCS profile, and there are facilities here to digitize and annotate that section. We can also save the section. We can click the diskette there, and we can save what we're looking at here, or the full profile. And we can even tick this box to download the seg.y data file for that particular line. I'll just cancel that. Okay, there we go. We also have the ability to compare two MCS profiles. So here, I'll click on this one. And this crosses the first profile, and I'm going to load that one into view 2. Whilst that's loading, I should point out there's also some single-channel seismics from the USGS, and the Antarctic library is also built into GeoMapApp. So here we have the second profile loaded, and again we can zoom and look at the structure. There we go. And for the places where these profiles cross, there should be a blue line on the profile, and that indicates where the other profile crosses this one and gives a CMP number across the top. And just like before, we can save these profile windows, we can save the map window, and we do that by going to the File, Save Map Window button, as we've already seen. Okay, so that's the digital seismic profile portal. We'll close that one, go back to the world, and look at the next one. Now the next one is ocean floor drilling. I'm going to leave that one to last, because that one we could easily spend 2 or 3 hours alone on that portal. There's so much built into it. So I'll leave that one to last and we'll come back to it. And at this point I should say that there are 6 separate YouTube videos describing the functionality of the ocean floor drilling portal. So the next one up is the PetDB portal, and this one interrogates the PetDB geochemical database. So it's loading the portal here, and in a moment we should see some symbols on the map and a control panel over on the right. There's a lot of information in the PetDB portal, and it takes a while to load. Okay, so there we go. So all of these squares that are shown on the map are locations for which we have geochemical data. And if we zoom, let's say we want to zoom on the East Pacific Rise, say in this area. The 9 North site was one of the RIS 2000 focus sites. And I take off the zoom function, and we'll look at the controls over on the right here. So these controls allow us to filter the data sets. So we have a choice of whole rock or glass or unspecified rocks. We can choose majors, trace elements, rare earths, volatiles, for example. So let's say in this example we do not want any rare earths, we don't want any isotope data. And when we untick these bit by bit, the map should, the display in the map should change, and there we go. So most of these samples have majors, so we'll keep that one. Yeah, so the other ones, there's not many samples in this particular location with those characteristics. So only the samples that have these characteristics of majors and whole rock or glass are now being displayed in the map. Clicking on one of these samples lights up its record in the table below. And we can also go into the table below and select a record there, and it will light it up on the map. So for one of these, let's choose this one. We have some tabs here, similar to a spreadsheet. And if we click onto the compiled chemistry, we see the chemical analyses values are shown. And there's the analysis there as well. We can also color the symbols that are shown. Oh, before I do that, let me just say, for this particular sample that we selected, it was this one here. If we hit the big button here, then it will open the PetDB webpage that takes us to even more information about that sample, like that. Okay, so similar to how we colored the data set that we imported in that example of importing data, we can color these PetDB data using the color button in the middle of the control panel. So let's say we want to color these on iron oxide. And there we have that familiar color palette that we can change using the sliders like that. Okay, let me minimize that. And we also have the ability to graph the data, graphing any two of the analytical columns together. And we can use the lasso function to select samples in particular geographical areas. And once again, there's a YouTube video that explains the PetDB portal in more detail. So closing the PetDB portal and reverting to the world view. Got a few minutes left here. Portals. Okay, seafloor magnetic anomalies. This is a really fun one to look at. We select it, hit OK, and we see that some lines appeared. The isochrons are now drawn on the map. So let's zoom to the South Atlantic area, and we can look at this portal information in detail. And I choose the cursor so I can click on the map. So this is the data set that comes from Dietmar Müller, who's now over at Sydney, in Sydney. And we see the mid-ocean ridge, the mid-Atlantic ridge coming down here, and we see the magnetic isochrons streaming away on either side. Selecting one of these isochrons with the mouse will tell us down in the lower left the anomaly number and the age of that particular anomaly. So that is anomaly 5 on either side. Then we have 6, the next one is probably 13, yeah, I think we have 18. So going away from the axis, we can see the increasing age as delineated by the magnetic isochron picks. So you could perhaps use this if you're teaching a 101 type intro class. You can have students gauge the distance of the isochron from the ridge axis, and they can calculate the seafloor spreading rate if they wished. And you can do that using the distance profile tool here. And actually I show an example of that in the YouTube video. Okay, so that's the isochron portal, and if we want more information about it, we see a link here that will take us to the page there from the author. Okay, so we close that one and go back to the world. Go find the portals window. Seafloor photographic transects. So this one has seafloor photos, generally from the deep-sea submersible vehicles such as Alvin and Jason, and we'll look at an example, see if there are any around the East Pacific Rise 9 North side. So if we open the menu there, and we see an item there, EPR 9 North, so let's select that one, and we hit the OK button. And GeoMapApp is now loading those photos. Now you probably cannot see on my screen there's a little dot appeared in the Eastern Pacific there, and that shows the location of these dives upon which we have the photos. So what I'm going to do is zoom in on this area, and I can do that by clicking the zoom button there in the Shapefile Manager window, and that zooms right in to this particular data set. Let me just minimize that window, the portals window, and bring this one down a bit. Okay, so here all these squiggly lines are the actual tracks of the dives of these different vehicles. So in this case we're looking at Alvin platforms, and let's see if we look at these dives and want to go and select one. Let's select dive 3964. So it's at the top of the window here, so let me go and look at it up there. And we'll zoom in a bit more. So we've zoomed in so far that the base map is now way beyond its native resolution and is pixelated mightily. So what we can do is look at one of the contributed data sets that some of the Ridge 2000 researchers donated to the project. And if we go into the base maps window for regional grids, we look under bathymetry, Pacific Ocean, and we go find the East Pacific Rise, and under the 9 North listing, let's see, oops, I lost it there, 9 North, there we go. We see that there's a 5-meter grid that was collected from the vehicle Abe that was donated by Dan Fenari. So let's select that. Oh, it zoomed out a bit to show the extent of the grid, and so let me zoom back in. I forgot to lock the map window display for that zoom. And we see now that the dive tracks are underneath this high-resolution bathymetry. So we'll again use the layer manager to bring those dive tracks up to the top layer. So I click on it there we go. So now we see the dives overlaying on the high-res bathymetry, in turn overlaying on the base map that is beyond its detail. And we can zoom a bit further, and we see the white outline of this particular Alvin dive 3964. Okay. So going to the Shapefile Manager window, we've selected 3964, and let me just go back here, 3964, and the yellow light bulb became illuminated. Clicking on that will load the photos, and you may be able to see little circles have appeared along the track. These are the locations of the individual photos, and clicking the button again will bring up the photo at that location in a window. Now Alvin has two cameras, so we're going to click the button again and get two windows coming up, and we'll put one over to camera 2, one is on camera 1, and if we scroll through these photos, let me just widen these so we can see the time range here. I have a cheat sheet that tells me a good one to look at. So let's just scroll down, and alright, around here we should see, so I chose a particular time for the photos, and as we scroll through these pictures, the views from the two cameras changes. So here we see a fabulous set of pictures showing the tube worms in this particular area, and the robotic arm of Alvin, and the collection basket, and so on, like so. So a very nice way to scroll through the pictures from the seafloor at the hydrothermal vents, like that. Okay. So that's an example of the seafloor photos. So let me close that portal. So I'm going to close the shape files up here. I'll close that, and I'll zoom back to the global scale, and let's see what else there is. Oh, I minimize that. Okay. So there's an item here for analog seismic reflection profiles, and it's similar to the digital seismic reflection portal, and it's actually a rescue attempt to capture all of the records, the seismic records that were collected on the old Lamont ships, Vima, Eltanin, and Conrad. So I won't go into detail. That is very similar to the digital seismic reflection one. I will show the Search Expedition Data portal. So we select it and load it. And we'll minimize the portal window. Okay. So it looks somewhat similar to the gravity magnetics topography profile, but in this case, this allows us to interrogate the database over here in AIDA to see what data sets we have online and the availability of data. So let's zoom on a particular area. Actually, before I do that, I should explain how the search functionality works. We have some Boolean operators here, an AND/OR operator, and we can choose data sets to search on using the area here. So let's, for example, look for Ewing cruises. So we'll type Ewing as a comma-separated list, and we'll look for data collected on board Ewing in 2004, and we'll hit the AND operator. And then we hit search, and the tracks are no longer displayed except for the ones that satisfy the search criteria that we specified. So for these tracks, we see the information in the table below gives us the cruise ID, information about the chief scientist, the start and stop dates, and over here on the right we have the status of the data set. So we see that the multibeam data is online, single beam, magnetics and gravity online, and so on. Another example, let me reset the map so everything reappears, and now we could scroll through. If we go over to the right, we can scroll and see the different data sets that we have, so CTD, ADCP, chemistry, and so on. Okay, let's do another search, and in this case we'll look for, say, CTD data or cruises that have either CTD or ADCP data. So because it's an either or, we use the or operator and hit the search button, and now we have the results of that search. And let's follow one of these lines, so let's go and see what we have. Some Palmer cruises here, so let's choose one of these. Let's see which this one is down here in the south. Let's light it up again. There we go. So it's MVP 0501 from 2005, and clicking the URL here will open the MGDS web page from which we can download the data sets. And there's the listing of all the different data sets that are available, both here through AIDA and at other repositories. Okay, so we've run out of time, unfortunately. I didn't have time to get to the ocean floor drilling portal, but like I said before, there are YouTube videos and they go into the detail of that portal. So there is a question that came in about the Antarctic data sets. Generally, for looking at the polar regions, it's better to go to the polar projection, the relevant polar projection, to look at the data sets in there, because depending on which data set it is, we may not have made it available in the Mercator view. So thank you for that question. And for the ocean floor drilling portal, the one that I didn't get time to show, this contains the core information, drill core information from all of the ODP, IODP, and DSDP legs. And we work closely with colleagues in Colorado and have links to the GENIS database and so forth. And the details on that are available in the YouTube videos online. So in the last minute or so, I'll show a couple of things in the Help menu. If you wish to leave any feedback or comments to help us improve GeoMapApp, there's a comments section here. And if you wish to view any of the tutorials that I mentioned throughout the webinar, there's a link under the Help that will open a web page that has links to the individual tutorials. So for the portals, in this section, there's a link to every single portal that we offer, and there are the 6 links for the 6 ocean floor drilling portals. And lastly, it would be great if you could spend about a minute filling in a short survey that I'll send around as soon as we finish the webinar. And it just has a few simple questions to find out who the audience has been and to ask how we can improve both the webinars and GeoMapApp. So your feedback via that survey will be very much appreciated. So lastly, I just need to remind everybody that the webinar has been recorded and we'll place it online. And if there are no more questions, I'll just check with Leslie to see if there are any more questions. No? Okay. So we'll end this webinar. And